Okay.
You have to hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
Push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done. You
okay.
have to hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done. You
okay.
have to hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done. You
okay.
have to hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done. You
okay.
have to hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done.
okay.
Hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
push it when you talk? Oh, and then,
Turn it off when you're done.
okay.
Hold it the whole time. Stays on.
Oh,
When you're done, turn it off.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
Item number one,
Good evening.
ordinance.
I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
Item number one,
Good evening.
ordinance.
I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
Item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one.
item number one,
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number one. recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
Good evening. I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council's Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, 6:10 p.m. to order. Okay, we'll take a quick recess. Madam Clerk, when you're ready, item number 1.
Item number 1.
We'll resume our meeting after a brief recess. Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, ordinance. Ordinance amending Chapter 17, Planning and Development, Article 5, Department of Planning and Economic Development, to amend the term of the Director of Planning and Economic Development for a 3-year term. Invited to attend, Mayor Moses Rodriguez.
We'll resume our meeting after a brief recess. Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, ordinance. Ordinance amending Chapter 17, Planning and Development, Article 5, Department of Planning and Economic Development, to amend the term of the Director of Planning and Economic Development for a 3-year term. Invited to attend, Mayor Moses Rodriguez.
We'll resume our meeting after a brief recess. Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, ordinance. Ordinance
Do you want to
amending
call another
Chapter 17,
recess?
Planning and Development.
We'll
Article
take
5,
another recess.
Department of Planning and Economic Development, to amend the term of the Director of Planning and Economic Development for a 3-year term. Invited to attend, Mayor Moses Rodriguez.
We'll resume our meeting after a brief recess. Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, ordinance. Ordinance
Do you want to call
amending
another
Chapter 17,
recess?
Planning and Development.
They did change the microphones this week.
We'll resume. Test. Testing. We're returning from a brief recess.
Item number 1, ordinance amending Chapter 17, Planning and Development, Article 5, Department of Planning and Economic Development, to amend the term of the Director of Planning and Economic Development for a 3-year term. Invited to attend, Mayor Moses Rodriguez.
Good evening, Mayor.
Well, good evening, councilors. Good evening, Madam Chair. I'm here just basically asking you to amend this particular ordinance. As you know, with past appointments of the Director of Planning and Economic Development, that position was a 5-year appointment, so we just wanted to make sure it stays uniform and reducing the numbers from 5 to 3 as it is with all the other department heads in city government.
Any questions, councilors? Councilor Castro?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Rodriguez.
Good evening, ma'am.
I did some research. Newton's planning ordinance does not list term for the person who serves as planning director. Taunton's doesn't either. Weymouth says it's an indefinite term. Worcester says they serve at the pleasure of the city manager.
I think we just want to, from the days that I set what you guys are sitting, is to create some accountability behind this government in the sense, and have it basically a two-way street where the mayor appoints and then the council basically confirms. And that's that's the way I see it, and that's how I hold it true to all the appointments in the city, and I continue to believe that that's how it should be done. Let the other communities copy what we're doing here, because that way I think there's some shared accountability in the sense that it's just not on the hands of the mayor or in the hands of the planner himself, but there's actually some accountability to the council as well.
And you're doing this to bring uniformity?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All set, Councilor? Councilor Griffin?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, sir.
My only question to you is, we go from 5 years down to 3. We're looking for a very high-quality planner for the city. We want the best and the brightest. We require residency in this city. So I think moving this down from 5 to 3 years, we're going to lose a lot of people who may be interested in working with the city of Brockton. And I think we both agree the city plan is probably one of the most important jobs we have as a city. We want to continue to grow and prosper.
I understand that, but I honestly believe that, our DPW commissioner that oversees a bundle of departments is a 3-year appointment. The building commissioner is a 3-year appointment. The CFO technically gets a 3-year appointment from the mayor. Every single department, the treasurer, the auditor, those are all important departments in the sense, and I think we basically have a collective in order to move the city forward, that it should not just be on one person or even the mayor. I mean, these positions, believe it or not, outlast the mayor's appointment anyways, or the mayor's election cycle. But I think it's important for us to stay uniform, where not one department head gets appointed longer than anybody else. I think it's the right thing to do to keep it all uniform.
Well, the last time we put an application out, interview process with city planner, how many people did we actually get?
We got about 10 applicants. Some of whom we didn't even go beyond opening the application in the sense, because we had school teachers applying to be a planner in the city with basically absolutely no planning experience. So we're going to do a better job this time around. I mean, basically looking at what we want to do with this in the city, but at the same time, I think it's important for us to limit the term to about 3 years so that it gives us a chance to, if somebody comes in and it's not working out, we don't have to go beyond that. We can go to, whatever next steps we need to take. Because when you do appoint somebody to 5 years, you're technically stuck with that person for 5 years. And if they have a contract, you're going to have, what was it?
Oh, no, sorry.
Are you talking to the guy behind me? Okay. So if you're appointed, someone to a 5-year appointment, whatever that salary is, even if the person isn't working out, they have a 5-year contract, basically. You have to kind of keep that person in the payroll for 5 years. And I think that's not fair to the city or any of the other departments that we actually have in the city. And that's why I think it's important for us to keep it that way.
In the contract for the plan,
What is it?
A non-performance clause, if he or she was not performing up to your standards, you could terminate them?
Well, yeah, you do, but you know how hard that actually becomes. A lot of it becomes very political, and I think it's important for us to take the politics out of it and realize that we're looking for the best and the brightest to do the job. Even if experience, you can gain experience, but attitude is kind of hard to change. So I think it's important for us to make sure we have somebody that we can grow with, but at the same time provide us with some safeguards to make sure that we're not going beyond what we need to go.
Well, the planner is a little bit different job title than the other department heads, because a lot of the stuff he's working on is going to take years to get going, get through the city council, get through the planning department before we actually break ground. So I'm not too sure if that's really the way to go for the city to reduce it. I think we might be limiting ourselves.
Well, Counselor, when you look at it, our appointments are 2-year appointments, and the public expect us to do yours and mine and everybody else's in here. The public expect us to do the job within 2 years. So the person actually has a 3-year contract. I believe that's long enough time for us to see the good in the individual, and if the person is good enough to be reappointed, we reappoint him. But if the person also is not cutting it, then we can cut our losses in the sense and not have to get stuck with that individual.
Oh, thank you. Can I have a question with the city solicitor also? Sure. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening.
As you just heard us speaking about, we have a 5-year contract with Person A. If he or she is not performing up to the standards set by the mayor, the city can terminate for non-performance.
Yeah, so Councilor Thompson wanted me to come up here and talk about this matter, sent me a couple of questions, but I can address yours right now. This is whether it was a 5-year appointment or a 3-year appointment, it's an appointment, and specifically this position, which is a department head position. There's a statute on the books that would allow for this department head's dismissal. So first of all, it's a 3-year appointment by ordinance in this city, but it's not necessarily a 3-year term in the contractual sense. It's not a personal services contract, so to speak. Can this individual be dismissed? Yes, not unilaterally by the mayor, but by a majority of approval of the city council, and it's set forth in General Laws, Chapter 43, Section 61. So, and what it says is that, that you have to set forth your reasons. So effectively, it would be a for-cause dismissal. So it says the person so removed shall receive a copy of the reasons for his removal, and he may, if he desires, contest the same before the city council. So in this respect, if someone wants to say, I need notice and a hearing, you do for a city council, a department head like the one we're talking about today. And if he is dismissed for cause, he or she is dismissed and effectively for cause and, with the majority of the city council, then I don't think that the city would be on the hook for the remaining benefits for this department head, whether it's 3 years or 5 years.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mrs. Solicitor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're all set, Counselor? Did you have questions, Counselor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I spoke with Solicitor O'Brien earlier just to kind of, because I know this question often comes up in the context of an appointment. Is this a contractual relationship or is this just an oversight matter for this board? And so the way that Solicitor O'Brien explains it, that we not only have appointment power, but we also have discharge power. And so I guess the process would be that the mayor would say that I'm letting you go for cause, and then that matter would come before the city council, and I guess we'd be the adjudicating body to decide whether cause exists or not. I would imagine that would be done in some sort of executive session and not out in public. It's nothing that this city's ever dealt with before. I don't ever remember or heard of this body adjudicating that matter. But it also, I wonder if there's an appeal process. I would imagine, or I don't know. Does the statute allow for an appeal?
It's silent, but I would imagine if it's a termination, then people can, file a complaint. I mean, depending on, I don't want to misspeak, but I guess depending upon what the cause of action would be, if it was discrimination or wrongful termination, they could, find a proper venue, I imagine, if they so choose to, litigate the matter, so to speak.
And I wonder, then we would have to establish a record, right, for our deliberation as to what we found, on what
Yeah, there would be-
basis, what the standards were, how we applied those standards.
Right, here, there'd be you would have to set forth what your reasons are for dismissal, and effectively it would be for cause in a situation like this. And then I imagine the mayor would present them to the city council, and the city council would, if they wanted to hold an executive session, a hearing on the matter, and then at some point vote. And if the majority chooses to, go along with the mayor, then that person would be dismissed.
Does the statute allow the individual counsel rights, or?
Yeah, they can be represented by an attorney at the hearing. I mean, before the council, yes, they can be, it says he or she may be represented by counsel at the hearing. It says it right in the statute, so, and I imagine, they should have somebody there.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's why I asked the solicitor, just to prepare some of this information, because I know this issue kind of always gets discussed in a way that we're locked in, and so I just wanted to really confirm whether that was the case or not. So I guess this grants you more authority to know that we're not locked into a 3-year period. If at any point you find cause, you can just bring that issue before us, and we would adjudicate the matter, and hopefully after that point not be on the hook for any extended, employment costs after that. So a little just education for us here on the council, and for the mayor's office and for the public. So I appreciate your preparation on that. Thank you, Mrs. Solicitor.
Thank you, Counselor. So once again, before us, all we're doing this evening is amending this from a 5-year term to a 3-year term, making it uniform with the rest of the majority of the department heads in the city. So that's all we're doing this evening. Everything else is informational. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Mr. Mayor, Councilors, any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to recommend favorably.
Second?
A motion's been made and properly seconded to send this favorably back to the full city council. All those in favor? All those opposed? It passes favorably back to the council. Thank you. Madam Clerk, item number, actually, Councilor Thompson, you have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take agenda item number 5. Okay, number 5 out of order and hear it now.
Is there a second?
Second?
Motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? We will hear item number 5. Madam Clerk.
Item number 5, ordinance. An ordinance amending Article 3, Problem Properties Task Force, and Article 4, Regulation of Vacant and Abandoned Properties. Invited to attend, City Solicitor James O'Brien, Attorney Sean Murphy.
Good evening, gentlemen.
So my office and Attorney Sean Murphy conferred with Attorney Sean Murphy and Attorney Brittany Murphy as well. And they effectively took reins on this as far as rewriting and developing these new ordinances. So I would defer to them to speak on the matter, if that's okay with the council.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. Attorney Murphy.
Hello, thank you. I'm here with my partner, also Attorney Murphy. No relation.
No.
Although everybody seems to think we're related, just happen to have the same last name. So we've drafted these, or amended these ordinances to deal with the vacant and abandoned building fees associated with the registry when a property remains vacant for a long period of time. I'll let Brittany talk about that. And the second part of the ordinance that we drafted was basically shifting the burden of any kind of enforcement, attorney's fees, clean and liens, sheriff fees, all those type of fees on the wrongdoer. Meaning the person who has a property that's fallen into disrepair ought to bear the burden of dealing with that property and not the taxpayer at large. As of right now, it would be the taxpayer or property taxpayer of Brockton that has to deal with that. It comes out of your general funds. There's no recoup. The way we've drafted this, any kind of enforcement will become a municipal lien, which the city can then collect. And if it takes a while to collect, there's late fees and things like that. So the city would be made whole for all their enforcement. This should have been done years ago. The receivership statute has it built in. There was no built in for code enforcement, but it should have been cooked in. It is constitutional. We've done the research. There's a case out of Springfield that talks about the difference between a fee and a tax. There is no tax here because it's unique to the property. You're not just assessing a tax on everybody. It's a tax on a specific person or property, not tax, it's a fee on a specific person or property for the actual cost the city incurs.
Okay. Councilors, do you have questions?
Yeah.
Councilor Nacastro?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here. So in 6.
Microphone.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. In at least 6 places, we're amending the ordinances to, instead of listing the inspector of buildings or a local inspector, to instead list the city of Brockton. Why is that?
So the reason is because the vacant and abandoned building it's going to shift to the assessors. Before the building department sort of managed the list, it makes way more sense for the assessor who has all the information on the buildings to manage that list of who it is. So it was drafted in that case so that at any point in time, if the city decides this person's going to manage it or that person's going to manage it, you don't have to go back and change the ordinance to say it has to be inspectional services or it has to be the building department. It's just whoever the representative for the city is. It's just a blanket, so you not have to go back and change the ordinance again.
Okay, I'm just wondering, why do you think the assessor is a better person to manage it than the commissioner of buildings? And part of the reason I say that is, for years, I walked the main street that I live off of, and I would see then building inspector Jim Casari driving around. There were several vacant properties in my neighborhood. He would make a route and check them all on his way to work. And that made a lot of sense to me because he was a contractor.
So we're talking about two different things. We're not saying that inspectional service is not going to have, or Board of Health is not going to have a role in going out and identifying the properties. The billing aspect of it is going to be the assessor, because the assessor already deals with the bills. So if they're managing the list on who's there and sending out the bills all the time, it makes more sense for just an administrative way of doing things. The inspectional service is still going to be there identifying the properties, but they're going to notify the assessor. I believe Troy could talk to this a little bit more if you like, but they're going to notify the assessor, and the assessor is going to handle all the billing and attaching the municipal liens. So it's really, it's not like you're not going to have the inspectors out there, you are.
I'm not trying to be difficult, but doesn't the collector do billing and the assessor assesses?
So, I mean, I understand, but if you're assessing, this is going to be out of my wheelhouse. This is the stuff that talked about with Troy. Troy could probably talk about.
And a blanket that says city covers them all.
That's what I'm saying. So if they decide to change it, I'm not the one making the decision who's going to collect this, but I'm saying if it ever gets shifted to somebody else, you don't have to change the ordinance. That's why it was put in there as sort of a blanket.
But there will be an internal decision, or how will we know who is in charge of this?
So,
Good evening, Madam Chairman,
Evening.
members of the committee. So after the changes were drafted, we actually met internally with a team that included myself and the solicitor and the attorneys, Murphy. I think that's the right way to say it. And we talked about these things, and the actual language of City of Brockton was changed at that meeting. And I think Attorney Murphy, to my right, was correct. It gives the mayor flexibility to decide which office should be the primary. But I know this current mayor's idea, Sean correctly said it, was for the assessing department to handle it. Part of the reason for that is that the assessing department is out in the community, right? Our Board of Assessors are actually out in the community inspecting facilities for purposes of valuation, but they're out in the community every day. And so it makes sense that because they are in the community every day, for them to be responsible for monitoring and maintaining the list. But the way the ordinance is written, it provides any and all departments, including the collector for the collections, including the law department for any of the follow-up. So it really provides the flexibility for it to be a team effort rather than managed strictly within the public property department.
Okay, thank you. I have another question for you, Attorney Murphy. Attorneys Murphy. So before we started the hearing, you mentioned receivership. And it seems like part of all of this is perhaps to put certain vacant and abandoned buildings into receivership. And how would the decision be made, and under what circumstances, and what do you anticipate?
So receivership is a unique tool, and it's not a first, you don't go straight to receivership. Receivership happens after there's been this considerable amount of attempts to remedy the issue. There are situations that no matter how many times you find somebody, no matter how many times you cite somebody, how many times you bring them into court, they simply just can't fix the property. So the court will appoint a receiver, a third party, who will then go into the property, make the repairs, and then they have a lien that supersedes all other liens except for municipal liens. So whatever cost they have to fix these buildings up will get tacked on as municipal, as a receiver lien, and then they will either auction it off or sell it on the open market, however the court decides or allows them to do it. Before that happens, they do allow the owner an opportunity to pay off the lien and keep the property. That doesn't happen very often because receiver is usually a very extreme situation. Once the property is sold, though, it clears all title issues, and it also, excuse me, it also allows the receiver to get paid. Now that property is no longer vacant and abandoned. And we can't just put a vacant and abandoned building in, it has to have code violations, there has to be something more. If it's just vacant, we can't do this. The only way to deal with it, if you want to take it off that and take it off that property and give it to a developer would be eminent domain, which you don't want to do in this climate right now because it's costly, extremely costly for a building. Maybe vacant property, but not for a building. But in this situation, the receivership is a great tool. We've done it a lot. We did it a lot when I was here. It works out. There was a mechanism at one point that the BRA was the receiver. I don't know how that worked because that was when Rob was here. But they had used CBG funds to make it affordable housing. That's not really the concern of the city. The concern of the city is that the code violations are fixed. So when we bring them in, it's up to the receiver what they do. The owner typically will get their own attorney, and then the judge will sort of referee, like, okay, are these repairs necessary? Are they not necessary? Are they reasonable? That's really not for the city to worry about. We just want to make sure that the property is taken out of its present state and brought back into code.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Griffin? I'm all set. You're all set? Do you have any, Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Attorney Murphy. Attorney Murphy. Maybe this is a question maybe to Troy, but basically what this ordinance is doing is allowing the city to capture the attorney's fees that are assessed during a receivership process or the abandoned and vacant building process. Do we know how much we've spent, say, over the last fiscal year on those fees? So just so the public can have an understanding of what we're spending on taxpayer fund that will then be shifting over to the infracted party.
I don't have that, Counselor, off the top of my head, but should you send this back to the full council, we'll have that information for you. Of note, another item is we are establishing an updated fee structure within these proposed changes.
Right.
The team did some pretty significant work and looked at what other communities were charging. And so the recommended fees, I think, are more in line with what we see in other cities, and think that they're both fair and should act as a deterrent from property owners leaving buildings vacant or abandoned.
No, I'm glad you highlighted that, because that was another line of questioning I would bring up, is that our current, I believe what the current is, 1,500 for an abandoned building, and we just find that is not a deterrent. So as these fees raise for extended periods of vacancy, then, you know, hopefully that would encourage a property owner either to sell or to, you know, to occupy that building and, you know, use it for something, you know, a public benefit for the city, instead of just allowing it to further degrade as it's vacant. So this is a great ordinance. I'm happy to sponsor it, and I hope this council recommends it favorably. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion to recommend this matter favorably.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend this favorably back to the full city council. All those in favor? All those opposed? It is recommended favorably back to the full city council. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you,
Murphy.
Council.
Thank you.
Have a good
Thank you.
evening. Madam Clerk, item number 2.
Item number 2, ordinance. An ordinance to adopt a new ordinance regarding the release of towed motor vehicles. Invited to attend, Police Chief Perez or her designee.
Good evening.
So this is a new ordinance regarding the release of towed motor vehicles, so a tow release form. So a signed tow release form ensures that the vehicle is returned only to the registered owner or authorized representative. It provides a clear audit trail proving that the tow was authorized by law enforcement. It provides the owner with necessary information, reason of tow, officer's name, where the car is located, so on and so forth. It creates a standardized, streamlined process that eliminates confusion. Implementing this ordinance aligns with the city with best practices used by other municipalities. Examples would be Taunton, Abington, Holbrook, and Easton. It ensures tows ordered for investigation purposes, accident scenes, criminal cases are handled according to strict guidelines. This will also reduce conflict and confrontation at the tow yards. We see a lot of that now where the owners go, they fight with the tow yards, and the tow yards can't verify proper ownership. So it's a back and forth. This will greatly reduce that confrontation with the tow yards, make things safer for those folks. And lastly, other municipalities do charge administration fees for releasing vehicles from police-ordered tows. The fee proposed here is $25 per release. And as an aside, barring any type of snow emergency, we tow approximately police-ordered tows 3,500 cars a year.
Wow.
So.
Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Sergeant. So essentially, this is an ordinance that kind of tightens up the current tow process, where whoever gets their tow card before they're able to have it released from the tow yard must first come to the Brockton Police Department and get a certification that the vehicle belongs to them. Is that essentially?
That's correct.
Okay. And then we'll be charging that person a $25 fee.
That's correct.
So that's for every vehicle that's towed by the Brockton Police Department?
Correct.
Okay. And I know we talked about this before, but do we know that this money goes to the city of Brockton, our general fund, and not necessarily Brockton PD?
I'm actually unsure. I think it's the general fund, but that might be a good question for Dr. Clarkson, because I'm not 100% sure.
Yes.
Okay, so I see Dr. Clarkson nodding, so this money would be coming directly to the city. I think this helps. As you said, it kind of, it will cut down on some of the arguments that happen at the tow yard, where a tow operator doesn't necessarily have the resources to determine who owns the vehicle. That's something that's more in the wheelhouse of Brockton PD, where there can be especially if we're towing it for, related to some other issue where we may have to see this operator, right? I mean, that would also,
That's correct.
I think, be some reason behind this ordinance, is to require somebody that you may want to talk to come into the police station if they want to get their car.
That's accurate, yep.
All right, then, if nobody else has any further questions,
Councilors, any questions?
motion to recommend favorably.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend this ordinance favorably back to the full city council. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ordinance passes.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Yeah, thank you, have a nice night.
Madam Clerk, item number 3.
Item number 3, ordinance. An ordinance relative to short-term rental regulations and uses in the city of Brockton during the World Cup events applicable April 1, 2026 to July 31st, 2026. Invited to attend, William Fortes, Interim Commissioner of Buildings.
Good evening, Mr. Fortes.
Good evening, Madam Chair, councilors. Thank you.
Good evening.
So this was discussed last year. It was brought to my attention that there were several violations in the city for short-term rentals. With the coming of the new the World Cup soccer in June, it had been kind of expressed throughout the media that there was a very large shortage of accommodations for the number of people that will be coming to the New England area in the next 2 to 3 months. Obviously, this is one of the biggest events in the world, and we just happen to be 15 miles out radius-wise from Gillette Stadium. I discussed it with the mayor, and he agreed that we could accommodate such a temporary order, given the fact that we don't have any regulations. It would be more challenging to enforce this because this is coming. Regardless of whether or not we have regulations, people are going to be renting out their places. And in my experience, and I've dealt with this in other communities, this is a very difficult ordinance to enforce, or it's a very difficult enforcement to process, especially when you get into court. You know, the courts are kind of like, well, what's the harm in letting somebody use their property for a day or two or a week or two? I just don't see that these cases have a lot of teeth in the court system, and I've been to a few different cases, and you know, it's not looked upon as an emergency. By allowing this temporary order, and again, it's very narrow. It only allows for the next 3 months. It expires on July 31st. This gives us the advantage first of regulating these houses rather than going to enforce them. It allows a person to legitimize a use that's probably going to happen anyways. It gives us a better visual of how many of these things are actually being used in the city. I don't expect that we're going to have a flood of these. I do expect that we're going to have quite a few. It's going to take us a little bit of time to develop a permit application where people can come in. There'll probably be a $150 fee associated with it, but this is going to allow us to track and regulate. And the most important thing is that we have the benefit of an inspection. Without the benefit of inspection, you know, there could be many cases where someone's renting out a portion of their property or a property that may not be safe. And I speak specifically about basement space. A person would be required to have a floor plan showing the area of the house that's going to be rented, whether it be a room or two. And we have the benefit of going in to inspect that. That would allow for us to do things like check smoke detectors, make sure that the required means of egress are in place, that if there are bedrooms below grade, that they're properly egress with the right rescue and escape opening. And all around, I think that this will benefit. It's definitely going to be more work for us, but I think from an enforcement standpoint, it makes sense to be proactive with this rather than trying to enforce after the fact. By the time this thing comes and goes, it's a big ocean wave and it's already out. By allowing the public to first apply for a permit, allow us to inspect the property, determine what that fitness of that property is, we get ahead of it. So when the surge does come, we'll have some things in place for it. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Councilors? Councilor Griffin?
Good evening, Mr. Forte.
Good evening.
I know it's a difficult question to answer, but Can you give us an estimate of how many properties you think would be made available for the 3 months?
Honestly, you know, it could be hundreds. I don't see it being thousands, where we don't really have the regulations in place. I would say that, you know, there could be 200 to 300, if I'm estimating conservatively. You know, on the high end, it might be 500. I don't know. I don't know that it's going to be limited to single-family homes, or it's going to be limited to, you know, multifamily homes. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I've heard in the media that there might be an exchange of housing where a person in the U.S. goes over to England for the week and swaps out property. There are a lot of different possibilities. You know, I don't know that what we're going to see is an overcrowding of people in a single-family home. I don't really have that, you know, those kind of, but I do estimate this will in fact create, you know, a pretty good amount of traffic in the ISD department, for sure.
Do you have the personnel to conduct the inspections?
Well, I can tell you that from a regulatory standpoint, I have a way better chance of keeping up with it on the inspection side than I do on the enforcement side. If we're able to get out and inspect, I think, you know, the average inspection might take 15 to 20 minutes. If we did 4 or 5 a day, and over a period of, say, 2 months, we did a couple of hundred, I don't see it overburdening us. You know, it doesn't, it certainly doesn't prevent the fire department from going in and doing their own inspection, and perhaps maybe we split those up. You know, they're looking for the same things we're looking for. They're looking for working smoke detectors. They're looking for, you know, basements below grade that, you know, that people might have bedrooms in. We work very closely together now on those same issues. And this is more of a, we're not going into, you know, straighten out code violations on a property that's had several, or, you know what I mean? I don't think it's going to create more enforcement than it, you know, you know, it's going to create more enforcement issues than it's going to stop. But I do see that the advantage is that we at least have some kind of idea as to how many are out there. So.
When does the World Cup actually start?
June. June, there are 8 games in June, I think.
In June.
But I do believe that we need the 2 months prior to that to get the permitting and the inspections in place. And then 1 month after for people to go home.
Right, it just seems to me that you don't really, I don't mean disrespect, we don't really have a clear-cut plan on how these inspections are going to be done, who you're going to collaborate with, and the time frame is relatively narrow to get this started.
I agree.
I agree with you. I think if anything, we're going to get more people trying to do this.
Sure.
And my concern really is one of public safety. What's going to happen after the World Cup games at night, loud parties late at night. It's going to impact our law enforcement, who's already stretched to the limits. I don't know. I think we need more information on this, Mr. Forte. I'm not against the idea, but I just think we need a little more vetting of this before we really do. I know we'll go back to the full council, but I think we could open a real can of worms here for the sake of really get out of control with parties at night, which we're already dealing with during the warmer months anyways, and with the World Cup fever being injected into it. It could be like steroids getting it going. So I do have some concerns over that. The chief of the fire department, Chief Nardelli, as you have in front of you, listed some suggestions and minimum requirements, which I think definitely should be upkept. And there just seems to be a lot left open right now at this point for me to be in favor of it. So I'll be here with an open mind, but I'd like some more information on it, please.
Okay, sure.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. As Councilor Griffin stated, we did receive an emailed letter from Chief Nardelli, and he does state a few of requirements, so we'll enter those into our minutes. Also, we did, I know Councilor Nicastro and myself spoke with Police Chief Perez, and from my understanding, we didn't invite her this evening, just she felt that the police were going to respond to any call. Didn't matter whether it was, they treat all calls the same, so she didn't have any specific statements on this, so that's why she's not here this evening. Councilors, Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Forte. How are you recovering from your surgery?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. I was able to walk here on my own, so that's
I
good.
noticed you walking. You're walking very well. Best of luck to you.
Not quite back to full duty yet, but
It
trying to
takes
get
time.
there. Yeah,
It
thank you.
takes time. Do
Thank you
your
for asking.
PT.
Yeah, thank you.
I think this ordinance is a very good start. I think it's very important that we have something in place because, yes, people will be renting their homes and people will be coming into the city seeking places to stay. I passed around and I gave to you a copy of the ordinance that the city, the town of Falmouth, but it's like a city, it's so big, has spent nearly the last year. They've had a task force that has worked on a short-term rental properties ordinance. And this is going in front of their town meeting this coming week. It's a good ordinance. It seems to deal with a lot of things, and I like that there are certain things that, certain parts of this Falmouth ordinance that I think are absolutely necessary in any ordinance for short-term properties, regardless of whether it's temporary or permanent. For example, a parking plan, not more than one parking spot per bedroom, 24-hour contact information, noise control and nuisance prevention. You've got to address these issues because it will be a joyous time for the people from the teams that win, and we have to have something in place. Yes, I did speak with Chief Perez several times. They will respond to any call that they receive. But in the month of July, it's a question of the timing of their responses because so many police officers go on vacation in the month of July. And so I think it's really important that anyone who's planning to offer their single family, their primary residence for sale, or for rent, should have to register with the city. We need to have a list of where these are so that the police on their precinct watches can do directed patrols or can keep an eye out to keep our residents safe. Of course, people will be concerned about noise and all that stuff, but at least you give the police an opportunity to address it without special calls. I think it should include proof that the house that's being rented has no outstanding taxes. And I think there should also be smoke detector certificate compliance, which is handled by the fire department. Chief Nardelli talks about it on his suggested requirements. Many people assume that as long as they have smoke detectors that work when they're selling or refinancing their mortgages, that they're all set. But in fact, they may not work. We need to know that if these places are going to be available for rent. These items that I've just listed are all included on Falmouth's ordinance. I think they could be slipped into ours easily enough. I did want to mention to you because the Falmouth ordinance and the article describing it that was in the Falmouth newspaper talks about how state law gives the Board of Health authority to regulate short-term rentals. And also, of course, authority over the sanitation code. And yet, this has been drafted to give the Commissioner of Buildings authority. Why is that?
Well, I would say that as an inspectional services department, we're not precluded from enforcing any rules under either the sanitary code or the building code or the fire code. All of those codes are, in fact, enforceable. And they don't necessarily have to be enumerated into the ordinance. They are subject to. This is a permit, it's permission. So if we deny a permit based on the fact that the conditions are unsanitary, unsafe, or they do not comply with the fire code, that's certainly our purview. There is nothing that would prevent us from, and the reason why I left that out is because obviously there are regulations that we would want to draft up permanently for a more cohesive, permanent ordinance regarding short-term rentals, including zones,
I noticed that the effective period for this proposed ordinance begins April 1st. I don't think it should be effective until it's passed and it's signed by the mayor. So that date should probably change.
Of course, yeah, that's subject to change, of course, yep.
Okay. Also, I think it should make clear that tenants cannot avail themselves of this. So in other words, if I rent an apartment somewhere, I can't sublet my apartment for this short-term purpose. This does not authorize that.
I would say under the contractual, anything that's contractual between an owner and a tenant is not, it's not up to the city to dictate that, because it is basically, it has to be authorized by the property owner. The property owner, under the Constitution, could be the person who's actually renting the property. And I don't believe that we have the authority as a city to say. Now, there may be a private contract that says, hey, you cannot sublease your apartment. In other words, if any good landlord will probably have in their lease that you can't rent out rooms, right? That would be a sublease, but that wouldn't be really in the city's purview to get involved. It's a private contractual agreement between two private parties.
Well, your document does say operators using their primary residence.
Yep.
I would infer that means an owner. And also the Falmouth ordinance goes into great detail about this applies to owners
Yeah.
and not tenants. So I guess that's subject to conversation. Also, I wouldn't want it to be a dwelling that's owned by a corporation. In other words, an apartment building can't sublet.
I don't exactly know that is another thing that we didn't anticipate it in this temporary order, because again, this is just over a period of 3 months. And, I would say that we could probably look at that a little bit more with permanent regulations.
Okay.
But here, we did not address that. There's probably a lot that we didn't put in, because it's a lot to digest if you want to have permanent regulations, but that's not what this is.
Well, I'm not looking for permanent, but the same conditions or concerns would apply, whether it's 3 months or 3 years. Do you know what I mean?
I don't disagree with you, Counsel, here.
So those are the kind of changes that I would be looking for to it.
Yeah.
Just again, to protect our residents and also to give our police the ability to find these rentals and address any concerns that may come up. And also to make sure that the sanitary codes and all the other codes are complied with.
Yeah, noted, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, Mr. Commissioner.
Good evening.
I concur with a lot of what my colleagues have stated, especially after reading this Falmouth ordinance. I think it provides a little more protections for the city and kind of outlines a few more prohibitions that I think we'd want to take into account. I think, we're inviting people in who are looking to celebrate, a historic probably occasion for their country. We want people to be happy and celebrate, but we also want to make sure it's done appropriately and respectfully for the community. And so to have some language in this regarding their prohibition of a nuisance and make the property owner subject to these fines. I see there's 21D violations, prohibitions in the Falmouth ordinance. And so, I think what we need to kind of project to any property owner who may be looking to rent out their place for this short-term time is, buyer beware, or owner beware. Make sure that you're properly vetting the people that you're looking to rent to, because if you don't, then there's going to be, monetary costs to the owner. And so I just think our ordinance needs to kind of flush some of that out. Because I also agree with you, sir, where you say this is going to come. We're 15 miles out from Gillette Stadium. We're a larger community. And so I think people want to take advantage, maybe some of the amenities that Brockton would offer. And we want to get out ahead of this, right? We rather be proactive and say, hey, come, seek a permit, than do this on your own. And now we're in the we're in the enforcement part instead of the permitting part, which I think, as you said, makes a little more sense. But on that, it doesn't speak to cost. Right? How much does this permit cost? What are we charging them if they want to seek a permit? I don't see that in the ordinance.
Yeah, okay, it would probably be $150, but again, I didn't set that determination in here. And what I'm gathering from your comments is that it's incomplete, and obviously I want to be able to, address these concerns. So yeah, I would add that in, as well as the starting date of when you could register your property, which we'd be looking toward May, I would think, anyways.
Yeah, I think if your department could work with, were you the sponsor of this, or? Oh, Charnel. Work with the city council regarding, I think we should take a close look at the Falmouth ordinance. That was, as Councilor Nicastro said, vetted over a longer period of time. And so I think some of the issues that they arise in their ordinance is definitely reasonable and should be applicable to the city of Brockton. So I think if we include some of these and some of the, make it maybe more clear, taken into consideration our fire chief's concerns.
Yes.
And so with smoke detectors and the coordination between your department and his department. So I think this is a good idea. I think for this period of time, we should have an ordinance in effect, but I think we need to work on it a little bit more.
Okay, very good.
Madam Chair?
Sure, right before the Councilor Nicastro,
Yes.
I did want to
Yes.
ask our legislative council. So with what Councilor Thompson just mentioned, if the amendments are made, because we're limited with time, the next city council meeting isn't until April 13th. So in order for this, could the amendments be made and presented at the council? If it is to pass favorably, make it at the council meeting, or do we have to have another ordinance meeting?
Nope, you can make amendments at the next council meeting, which would be passage to a third reading. You could also make amendments at the final passage night, which would be the last meeting in April. There will also need to be a public hearing as well, and we'll need to receive the report back from planning. So you have at least the end of the month until you're gonna, best case scenario, be able to pass this as it is.
So does that work? I just want to make sure that we're moving along to be able, because it is a short term before you know it. We're in June and, there's, the whole purpose of this ordinance is to be able to regulate. So I want to make sure that we work on it and pass it, move it quickly,
So, Madam Chair, so in that timeframe, I would have these amendments back to you by next week, if that were possible, and then what, appear before?
Well, no, next week is finance, so our next city council, so that would go straight to city council. It wouldn't be another
Any
ordinance
counselor at the
meeting.
meeting on April 13th, I think that's the Monday, can present those amendments.
Okay.
So the
That
13th.
night.
Okay, so I'll have those prepared well in advance. And I will communicate with both the fire chief, I will check the sanitary regulations. I'll also speak to Councilor Griffin about any other concerns that might, and then we'll see if we can get something together that everybody's going to be agreeable to. That
Okay, that sounds great. Councilor Nicastro.
I'm willing to make the changes and to work with Mr. Forte and Counselor Thompson and Counselor Resnick
Okay.
to get it done as quickly as possible.
That sounds
'cause
great. I just feel
I understand the time.
we're working with a short period of time, and the purpose of this ordinance is to regulate and to, it's coming our way, so we'd rather be prepared, and we don't want to, lose track of time. But I know Mayor Rodriguez wanted to speak on, had comments on this matter.
Good evening again. I just wanted to chime in and let you councilors know that doing nothing is not an option.
Right.
This thing is going to happen. People are going to be renting their places. I'd rather see the city involved in controlling some of these rentals versus doing absolutely nothing. We are not inviting people to do this. I want to make sure that we're clear about this. It's not like we're putting a sign saying, please come to Brockton and rent our facilities in Brockton. This is just so those that want to rent their properties are going through the proper channel to get this done. And then give the city some leverage, because there's no way we're going to be able to enforce this unless we have something in the books to do so. An ordinance, I've looked at the Falmouth ordinance as well. This is not even though it's short term, but this isn't a temporary thing. This is an ongoing thing.
That's right.
And Dr. Clarkson lives in Falmouth and basically know that this is going, because they're trying to control the Airbnb. That's how to control down the Cape, in the sense, to put some controls behind it. What we're proposing is to have something in the books that regulates the nonsense that takes place in this community sometimes. And we know that this is going to happen. We're the closest city, large city, next to Foxborough, south of Boston, we know this is going to happen. We have several teams that are playing in the Cup. They're going to be playing in this region. This is going to be a problem. So if we don't have the option of saying, well, I don't think we should do this, I don't think we should do that, this is going to happen whether we like it or not, and people are going to rent their places. And if we don't have one iota of law behind this thing, there's no way we can enforce anything. We're not going to be going around to the 35,000 residents that we have in the city checking to see if everybody in there is a tenant, not a tenant, being rented, not being rented. But having nothing in the book that deals with these issues, we're being asked to do this because they know that we're going to get bombarded with some of these things. But at least, one, it gives the city an opportunity to earn some funds, some fees in the sense, and two, it'll give us also an opportunity to perhaps check out some of these residents that might not be, inspect some of these residents that might not be at the level that they should be in. It'll give us some of that opportunity as well. But if we don't have something in the books, even if it's a starter, is that going to prevent people from renting their homes? The answer is no. They're going to do it anyways. And then I know you councils are going to be calling saying, I know that there's people living here and those people living there, but at least give us the weapons to be able to enforce the rules and regs in this city, regardless of it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we need something in the book that will give us the authority to be able to enforce the rules and regs in the city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilors?
Can I ask a question?
Councilor Castro.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez, how will you get the word out?
Well, I think the passage of the ordinance will be a good way to get it out there, to say, look, the city has passed an ordinance, and believe it or not, I was talking to Dr. Clarkson a few minutes ago, people will be, as the old word goes, snitching on each other, because if I paid for a permit to rent my place and he has not, I'm going to be able to pick up the phone and perhaps call the city and say, hey, Bill Forte is renting his place to a group of people and he did not get the permit from the city to do it. So the word of mouth, us talking it out, we passing it, people that watch us constantly on this. The newspaper guy is here. I'm sure he'll write something up in the paper for us to get it out there. We'll get it through our social media, through the website, that the city has passed an ordinance to deal with this issue. I think it's important for us to let people know that we have an ordinance that prohibits you from doing this unless you have a permit to do so. And I think that's the important thing.
Perhaps use your network of...
All of it. Churches, community organizations.
Yes, good.
Council Grifton's friends down in Taunton, everybody.
If I may, Counselor, I'll be doing an instructional video on it, upon the passing of this ordinance. Get the word out there, make sure that we have the right platform on Citizen Serve, and we do plan to get this out, not promoting, but certainly making sure that everybody understands what the instructions are, so.
Good.
So I ask you to please pass it, and give us a chance to work on this, tweak it the way we need to tweak it. You've got about, 3 readings by the time it becomes law in the sense, but at least we'll have something in the books that we can actually enforce in the city.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorably with the understanding that we are going to work on amendments.
Perfect.
Second.
Motion's been made and properly seconded to recommend this favorably and work on the amendments. All those in favor? All those opposed? It passes. Back to the full city council.
Thank you.
Bad habit.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, our last item, I believe, item number 4.
Item number 4, ordinance. An ordinance increasing the refuge trash bill to quarterly payments of $130, billed 4 times a year. Invited to attend, Mayor Moises Rodriguez, Chief Financial Officer Troy Clarkson, DPW Commissioner Patrick Hill.
Good evening, gentlemen. I know this was discussed at the end of last year. We had you before the ordinance committee back in, I believe, November or December. And we said we would hear it at the beginning of this year. And we were a little delayed with all the snow we got, but we're here.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll make just a brief opening statement, then I know the commissioner has a presentation that he and his team have put together. I'll just start by, I think, impressing upon the committee the importance of what we're asking you to do. We know that fee increases are difficult and they're a challenge, but for some time, we've been discussing with you our concerns about the fact that the revenues for this enterprise fund have not been sufficient to meet the costs. And so when an enterprise fund incurs a deficit, the general fund has to cover it. And those funds are then taking money away from the important purposes of the general funds, and that's to support public safety and public education and public works. So I think for this proposal, which is different from one that we provided to you before, the mayor and the commissioner got a little creative and thought that with a fee increase, we're also providing something to the residents and the users. And so I think it's a good compromise that actually provides something of value along with the increase, but it addresses the very serious problem of our revenues in the enterprise not meeting our expenses, and that's not sustainable. And that's something that the Department of Revenue has flagged, and so it's really important that we address this. And with that, I'll certainly be happy to answer any questions you have, but we'll turn it over to Pat to make the presentation.
Thank you. You have to press the button so it's green, Commissioner.
Oh.
So press it so it turns green.
How's that sound?
It's green, it's working.
If it's green, it's good. All right. So we put together a presentation here for you to kind of explain how we got here. I know that we have made this somewhat of a presentation in prior, in the past, but this kind of outlines, why the condition of this enterprise fund is suffering, basically, because from 2003 to 2024, we relied strictly on a $70 per quarter rate. That rate was there for 21 years. It carried the refuse budget for that entire time, but as costs started to increase with new contracts, it turned out to be, insufficient. In 2024, we came to the council with a presentation knowing that the enterprise was in a difficult situation. We asked for $110 a quarter at that time, and we were given $90. $90 carried us for a year, but once again, we're back into a situation where the enterprise is not supporting the operation. Currently, we're projecting this year somewhere between $1.3 and $1.4 million. Again, this is all based off of, the fees that come in. The refuse budget is fairly complex. It's not just the fees that we take in quarterly that support the enterprise. There's fees from pay-as-you-throw bags. There's fees from larger items that get dumped. There's fees for mattresses. All those fees stay within the enterprise, and we use those every year as retained earnings to offset the budget in the next fiscal year. But those fees have dried up. Our current contract costs us about $9.1 million. So with the amount of fees that we take in to get to that $9.1 million, at a minimum, we project $110 per quarter. And we looked at several different options, after speaking with you guys last time. We looked at and considered, raising the rates for mattresses, the rates for bulk items, charging fees for things we don't typically charge fees for, driving those costs up to kind of offset the I guess, the reason that we're here now. But things in the refuse are not consistent. Bag revenues are not consistent. I mean, we have a rough idea of what we're going to get every year. But the fear was, if we drive up those costs to try to level off these costs a little bit, that we're going to encourage more dumping. So, you know, increasing a fee for a mattress from $20 to $50, in my experience, is going to just cause more people to dump mattresses throughout the city. And we already deal with it quite a bit every day anyway. So with this $130 proposal, part of the proposal is to potentially go up to a 64-gallon receptacle as opposed to the 35-gallon receptacle we have today. So in getting $130 a quarter, we would be able to get into a loan. We would be able to purchase all of the barrels, new barrels, and deliver those to all the constituents. We would also take the old barrels, remove them. We have to shred them and get rid of them. But it gives people, one of the big things we hear is that the barrels are too small. A 64-gallon barrel, as opposed to a 35% barrel, provides you with, I believe there's a 83% more increase in trash space in the barrel. So with our weekly service, unlike most other communities, we offer a lot of items that most people don't offer. If you go to a town, you get trash and you get recycling. You may get a little bit larger of a trash barrel. You may have the same size recycling barrel. However, here, you get weekly trash, you get bi-weekly recycling, you get 42 weeks of yard waste, which is unheard of. Most communities don't offer any yard waste. You get one free bulk item a week. It also includes white items, refrigerators, you know, dressers, chairs, tables, washers and dryers, mowers, all curbside. So we look at these costs and we bid out this contract in a way where we want to make it as easy for the constituents to get rid of the trash as possible. So all of the stuff is done curbside. A lot of communities don't bid trash like this. There are quite a few towns now that aren't even in the trash business. They don't offer any town trash. Or you could get a sticker and go to, you know, one of their town dumps, at which point you're still paying a fee to tip whatever you're dumping there. So the next slide talks about the expenditures in the budget. And if you go to the slide right after that, it gives you a graph to kind of give you an idea of exactly what the refuse budget looks like. So down the bottom, and I point this out because this isn't a large department per se. Most of the fee for trash goes to pay the trash collector. So what's highlighted in orange is basically my staff and the expenses that come from my staff. Everything else in gray is the expense of the trash contract. On the next slide, you'll see exactly what this budget is built from. It carves out individual trash services, 2 families, 3 families, 4 families, 5 families, and 6 families, and it gives you a grand total. So we have 20,000 accounts, but we have 26,000 barrels out in the system. The next slide talks about the revenue and where we get all of our revenue from within the budget, whether it be illegal dumping fees, penalties, liens. Liens come in annually. They're also not consistent. Some years we get larger portions of liens that it's collected through the treasurer. We don't know what that number is going to be until later in the budget year. So we can't consistently put that in the budget, but we see an average collection rate versus what we bill with the liens at about 94%. So 94% of the bills that we send out get paid based off of the 75% that we get initially, and then the addition of the liens.
While Pat scrolls to the next slide, I'll just jump in, and because I think he just made an important point. They are, when you look at the information originally, and I know a couple of counselors, both on the ordinance committee and other counselors raised that issue because the initial collections were typically only around 75%, but it's really important, the second half of what the commissioner described, that when the liens go on, eventually those collections exceed 90% consistently. And so that's an important fact, because certainly if we were just collecting 75%, then the budget wouldn't be realistic. But the revenue gets captured in the ensuing fiscal year, so the previous year's liens plus the current year's collections get us consistently close to 100% of our revenue goal.
The next slide talks about revenues and how the revenues are generated. Much like I said, the 75% of the fees get paid on time. Talks a little bit about the lien process. And a little bit about the multifamily abatements where, you know, a community or a house that it's a 2 or 3 family can apply for an abatement on an unrented apartment. On the next slide, we talk about specialized fees from prevention. You know, the current specialized fee typically about $20. So $20 would cover a mattress, a box spring, a TV, a computer, monitor, or a couch larger than 6 feet. We will continue to kind of watch those fees. But for now, I think my recommendation would be to keep those fees where they are, especially if we're able to get to the $130 per quarter. And on the left-hand side of that slide, there's kind of an interactive map. And we've been using this interactive map for just shy of 2 years. And it kind of gives you a picture. All those dots represent a dumping. And it gives you a picture of what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's, you know, the staff that I have are not just to follow the trash people around. We do a lot of dumpings. We do a lot of cleanups from the Board of Health. We deal with the unhoused quite a bit. But we keep track of that on this interactive map now, and every time my guys go out, we like to document it. So if anybody would like that sent to them, I can send that to them later after this presentation. On the next slide, we talk about dumping prevention revenue. And you could see the fee here in the map, right? So there's Brockton at $20. There isn't a community around here that offers a mattress. This is strictly mattresses for $20. And we pick it up curbside. So for $20, if we can maintain that fee, I think it will prevent a lot of dumping. But you can see what other communities are doing. Abington, Rockland, Hanover, Hanson, East Bridgewater, Halifax, Bridgewater, all $50. $47 in Easton, $50 in Randolph. We built the fee specifically for that reason, to try to keep the city as clean as possible. And I think with the new barrels, I think we've been successful. But again, the goal today is to try to get the fee and not adjust the other fees. And I think that's a fair way to maintain the city the way that it is now. On the next slide, there's a few pictures of some of the more recent dumpings that we've had. I'm going to say within the past 30 days, probably, those came from. And these are atypical dumpings, right? I can tell you that place where the mattress is over on Southfield Drive, and we see this frequently. It's not abnormal to pull up to Southfield Drive and pick up 8 or 10 mattresses on a Monday morning. Now, we deploy cameras, and we have been pretty successful with some of the new cameras that we have. And we will continue to deploy more cameras as time goes on. But these are the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So as a result of the increased contract prices that we knew about prior to our most recent amendment in our contract, when we came here in 2024, we knew that we needed $110 a quarter to stay afloat. You know, it was the ordinance committee at the time that decided that they didn't think that that was appropriate, that the cost of the increase was not fair to the residents. Certainly, you are the body that makes those decisions. But I can honestly tell you that, you know, at that time, we knew that the program was not going to be successful. So we're back here now asking for a rate increase, one that I think we needed in 2024, but two that will offer people in the community a larger scale trash barrel, which a lot of people have been asking for, and it will stabilize the enterprise so that the city funds will no longer be offsetting the debt in the enterprise fund. Because honestly, at the end of the day, if we don't raise the rates and the city funds have to pay for the shortage in the fund, ultimately it goes to the taxpayer anyway, right? So these costs are, we establish enterprise funds to be transparent. We want people to know where their money is going, exactly what's happening with it. But they also, enterprise funds need to be self-sufficient. And with the rates the way they are today, it's just not. And at some point, you know, I can't speak for Dr. Clarkson, but I know that the DOR looks down on enterprise funds that can't support themselves. And I'm not saying for sure, but it's always a possibility that the enterprise could be dissolved and that the burden would be on the taxpayer.
Thank you, Commissioner. So councilors, I did ask Megan to please email this to us so you could actually review it at your leisure. Just a quick question before I open up to the councilors. You said, so with the larger barrels, it would be an increase of 83% more trash?
It goes from a 35 gallon barrel to a 64 gallon barrel. The overall interior of that barrel, based on the shape of the 35 gallon to the 64 gallon, gives you about 83% or 84% more space.
So wouldn't that cost us more money for them to haul because we're producing more trash?
So the way the contract was designed, it's based off of tonnage. So when the contract, it was bid, oh, I don't even have my microphone on, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
I can hear
Okay.
you.
I guess I have a big mouth. It was bid on 26,000 tons per year. We don't typically exceed that 26,000 tons per year. We're pretty comfortable saying that, you know, we even with the increased barrel size, we think that, you know, that will stay below that 26,000 tons per year. I have had some discussions with the hauler to talk about, you know, the possibility of new barrels. I've reached out to a couple of vendors to try to get an idea of what a barrel would cost, not only what it would cost to purchase the barrel, but to also deliver it. They all get stamped and tagged so that the barrels stay with the individual homes, and then they would retrieve the old barrels as they went along.
Okay. And one last thing I picked up on was you said we have 20,000 accounts, right? Was it 20,000, but we have 26,000 barrels? Where's the 6,000?
So we have 20,000 accounts, and if you look through that slide, Counselor, it breaks out the accounts. I think 19,000 of them are single families. I think 2,000 or 3,000 of them are two families. So there'll be two barrels on each account. So total barrels out on the road is about 26,000.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, do you have questions for the Commissioner or CFO? Councilor Castro?
Yes. Thank you for being here. Good evening. So your latest contract, we are paying $9.1 million a year.
That's
to
correct.
get rid of our trash.
Yes.
And that's a substantial increase over the 6.4 million we were paying before.
Correct.
Why was there so great an increase?
So when in 2023, the first contract was a 5-year contract, the first term or the first piece of the contract was 5 years.
Yes, through June of 23.
Through June of 23.
Yes.
In June of 23, that rate went from, let me do the, I think that was that the last one that I'm trying to think here? We were at, with the increases in the prevailing wages and the whole 9 yards, we were at 7.8 million, I believe, at the end of that contract term. So in 2023, when we went to renew, we sent the renewal, as is our responsibility, to Republic 180 days prior to the expiration, before the contract renewal date. And what happened was, they said, well, we're not interested in renewing this contract under these terms, which kind of got us into more of a legal stance, I think, than anything. The solicitor's office kind of stepped in and said, well, they can't do this. And after reviewing the contract language, it was iffy. So what I did was I had some discussions with Republic Services. I had some discussions with Capital Waste. I had some discussions with Harvey, which has a different name now, but I can't think, Waste Connections or Waste Innovations, or it's another Brockton-based company, but a national company. And what we found out was that not only we were in a really good position with the contract, because the lowest contract offer that I got at the time was $9 million to maintain that same level of service. And that was from both Capital and from Harvey. So we went back to Republic to talk to them, because when they bid the contract initially, the tonnage for solid waste, the disposal cost for solid waste was $59 per ton. That cost, even 2 or 3 years ago, was $89 per ton. So their presentation to us was, we want to stay in business with you guys, we just can't do it under these conditions. It's just costing us too much money. We're losing money here in the contract. So after a little bit of back and forth and discussions that I had with the other vendors, Republic said, you know what, we'll renew this one last contract. And then in the next contract, we're going to have to sit down and have a negotiation, because we can't continue to renew under these terms. We're just losing too much money.
If I could just provide a little additional information, what Pat did, he did at the direction of the then mayor and in consultation with me. Solid waste collection and disposal has a specific exemption from Chapter 30B, the Uniform Procurement Act. So it allowed Pat to actually negotiate with other vendors. And that gave us some leverage, because he was able to actually go to other companies, and we could have switched vendors without a full bid process. And so that benefited the city because it created competition. So, and if you just look at, remember, this was immediately post-pandemic, where prices for everything had skyrocketed. And so he was able to, although it was a significant increase, I think, negotiate a very good deal for the city of Brockton, because he sincerely went out and asked other companies if they would be interested in providing those services to the city.
So in the most recent renewal, we did the same. We sent the request to the vendor 180 days prior to the expiration of the contract to discuss, because the contract is a little, I would call it questionable, the way that it's written. It calls an extension an amendment, and an amendment must be negotiated. So when I sent that to Republic, they said, listen, you know, we can't bend this time. We need to sit down and have a discussion. I brought that to the mayor. The mayor told me that, you know, see what I could do, sit down and have a discussion with Republic, see what they'd be willing to offer us, and then you can bring it back to me and we'll have a conversation. So I went back and forth with Republic on several occasions. You know, they came in higher than we're at now, but we ended up settling at 8.75 million, which sounds like a huge jump, but that included the 2%. So we would have been at 8.2 million anyway. So it was about a $500,000 increase based on the prior contract. Also part of that contract, due to the contract year, we had to pay prevailing wages. The prevailing wages are where the 9.1 comes from. The contract is 8.75. The remainder of that balance is the raise in prevailing wage rates for the truck drivers who are Teamsters.
So the prevailing wage is included in the 9.1 million?
Correct.
Okay. Does Republic also, as part of the contract, pick up the school waste?
So the school has their own separate trash contract, I believe, with Capital Waste. But that was not part of the initial bid package, no. So
Why isn't theirs covered? Why isn't it just one trash?
I can't speak for that. I didn't develop the initial contract. What's in the initial contract is specifically carved out certain city buildings, up to so many containers, but the schools, for some reason, have always been separate. I'm not saying that I think it's the best idea. I don't know if we would get a better deal had we packaged it in as one. But what I can tell you is they're not part of the bid docs that went out to for the RFP.
Okay. So a larger barrel will mean fewer green bags, so people will save on the green bags?
So people will save on the green bags, which, you know, and we tried to factor that into when we built this rate, because we get, meaning the city gets a percentage of bag sales, right? So the bag sales average around $900,000 a year. We get 40% of those bag sales. So less bags means less revenue. So we tried to consider that when we were building the rate.
Sure. I understand that it costs more than $20 to dispose of a mattress right now.
It does. I think at a minimum right now, even if you're a Brockton resident and you bring it to the old factory where, what's the golf? I'm trying to think of the name of the golf factory. The FootJoy over on, in the village.
Intervale.
I believe it's either $30 or $35 if you drop it off and you're a Brockton resident. If you're not a Brockton resident, I believe it is $50.
So why wouldn't we just pass through the same cost?
Well, we offer it for 20 right now.
Right.
Yeah. We could.
You know, because we're losing money, do you have any sense of how many mattresses a year we collect?
I know it's in the thousands, Counselor. I could get a number for you. I know we do keep track of it for sure. But I don't have a number off the top of my head, no.
Okay. And what about, have you been finding users of the recycling bin for the trash?
We have. We started doing that pretty actively last year. Even with the new the kids that we get in the summer program, there is some thought about sending them out with somebody from my staff and flipping barrels, just to ensure that there's not a lot of contamination, because last year we ran into a point where we couldn't dump the recycling at the recycling MRFs because there was so much contamination. And when I say there was a lot of contamination, I mean, we found chainsaws at the bottom of these things. We found microwaves at the bottom of these things. And you know, people get creative. But we did get pretty aggressive with tagging for a period of months. It seemed to drive the contamination down. But I suspect, you know, once a year, we're probably going to have to continue to do that to just make sure that we stay on top of it. Because once they start getting refused, that drives our cost up for disposal.
I had a resident tell me that he showed the city for raising his taxes. The top 2 inches of his recycling bin would be recycling and the rest was trash.
We see it a lot. I mean, we've seen people go out and purchase barrels that are identical to the barrels that we pick up, and the impression that the hauler had was that they purchased 2 trash services, which is why they had 2 identical trash barrels. Problem was, one of the barrels was labeled and stamped, the other one was not. But when the driver's going along, he can't tell the difference, right? He's just picking up the barrels that he knows he's there to pick up. And an identical barrel is an identical barrel. So people do get creative.
I'd like you to take a minute to explain the enterprise fund. I've gotten a lot of calls asking me to oppose this increase, and I've tried to explain to people about how the enterprise fund has to be
Self-sufficient.
That's right, that's right.
So the fees are supposed to support the operation, basically. And part of those fees or those fees or that revenue that's generated covers all of the costs that are associated with the enterprise. That's the employees, that's their retirement packages, that's their insurances, that's costs that we would have to pay to the city for, for the treasurer collecting, there's a formula for all that stuff. It pays the employees' hourly wages, it pays for, the gas for the vehicles, it pays for the vehicles that the employees use. But primarily, especially in an enterprise like this, 90%, I would say, or so, of the enterprise money goes directly to the hauler for the disposal.
And sort of follow on from that, to go back to my opening statement, enterprises were created specifically so that essentially public utilities, water and sewer and trash, support themselves and don't become a burden on the general fund. And the challenge, the problem, not only from a taxpayer perspective, but from a regulatory perspective, is if the enterprises aren't developing sufficient funds to support that operation, then by law, the general fund has to cover that. And trash, a little different, but the general fund and the people that benefit from that are not always the same people that benefit from the enterprise, right? The sewer is a good example, and even in some cases, the water enterprise. And so they were designed to operate like a private business within the municipal entity. And the challenge with having the general fund support it is first, our budget is based on a certain number of municipal services supported by state aid and our tax levy and the other fees we collect. If we start chipping away at those available funds to cover the enterprises, then our general services are suffering. And that's not sustainable. And so I think I would suggest that a good response to the callers is everyone in those enterprises is expected to pay their fair share. And if they're not paying their fair share, then the general taxpayers are covering that. And again, after a while, then that's going to start to diminish the services that are available to the taxpayers. And that includes public safety and public education, and even the non-enterprise portions of public works. And so it's a balancing act. And as I said when I opened, we understand the challenge of presenting increasing fees. But in this case, there's actually some value added by increasing the fee. And so we've taken your feedback and what we've heard from the public seriously and tried to come up with something where we weren't just increasing a fee, that the folks that were asked to contribute more would get something in return.
Well, I hope you'll have money for cameras, because I think you could reduce the amount of dumping, at least in Ward 4, if there were some good cameras strategically placed, so we could read license plates.
Yeah, we've worked really, really hard to get comfortable with a camera system that has been effective. right now, in our more recent purchases, I think we're in a position now where we can start placing more cameras out in the field and finding more people. But it took a while to get there.
My limited experience with identifying who's dumping, in every situation, they were from abutting communities, and then there was one garden guy from Lynn who was dumping on Came Street in Ward 4.
Yep, we found one guy that we chased for years down on a street in the village, and he lived in Holbrook. And every 2 or 3 days, he would come, and in the same truck, we knew exactly who the guy was, what he looked like. I mean, we could identify a mole on his face, for God's sakes, by the time we ended up finally catching up with him. But it's really, really difficult to get a license plate on a camera at night. So we had to deploy other practices. And since we've done that, we've been pretty successful.
That's good. I believe you when you say we have to have this money, but I'm concerned about the residents. And I appreciate your candor tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just a couple of questions to follow up with what came up in this conversation. So when we were negotiating this contract with Republic, I remember their trucks, their recycling trucks, were supposed to have cameras on them, and they were supposed to be able to detect if people, what they were throwing in there.
They do have cameras on them.
So they're able to tell like which residents, which barrels have trash and which barrels don't, are putting recycle.
So the cameras on the trucks are more of an outside visual, not in a dumping capacity.
Okay.
So what happens is they may be able to identify an area when a bad load goes and it's contaminated. They may be able to say, hey, it could have been one of 5 streets, but they're not able to distinguish which barrel or which house it came from.
Okay, I was under the understanding that they were able to see, so they could tell which resident was doing that, so they could be fined directly, but I guess I'm wrong. The other question that came up was, with the surrounding towns, Easton is no longer going to be, they're no longer going to be picking up trash, so everybody, all the residents have to find their own.
Private hauler. Yep.
Right, so I'm figuring with that, we're going to end up with a lot more dumping with big items, so that's something I'm not looking forward to, but when I heard that, I was shocked. But yeah, Easton's no longer going to be doing that, so. And the last question is, I heard that this was going to be retroactive. How far back, is that true, or?
The calculations in your presentation assume, and what we've requested in the transmittal letters for this, is that this is retroactive back to July 1st.
Okay, so how would that work?
So in the final billing,
It would be, we would have to run something through Munis, but it could be done through Munis based on, we could run the accounts, apply the difference for the billing quarters, and then apply the fee where it would be a standalone piece of the bill, so that they would understand that here's your new fee and here are the arrears.
Okay. Counselor?
just one aside, and thank you to Megan McKee from the Department of Public Works, has just provided us with actual information on the mattresses. So far in fiscal year 26, so far this year, it looks like 1,865 mattresses. All of last year, 4,288. In FY 25, 4,288 mattresses in Box Springs.
Wow.
Wow, that were dumped or that we got fees on?
That's, no, that we got fees on in fiscal year 2025.
Legal.
Thank you, Megan. Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on the retro, since it was just discussed. I just want to flesh this out a little bit. So if this passes as is, and it goes from 90 to 130, that's a $40 quarterly increase. So the next quarterly billing obviously would reflect that increase. And then you're saying that you would have your normal quarterly increase and then a side bill for
$80.
the whole retroactive fee, or you just explain, what's that side bill going to look like?
My thought is, and without, I'm not the billing guy, but I know that there is a way to segregate
Read it.
a piece of the bill to apply a specific code or calculation based on the number of trash fees that are on that account. But not living in the munis world.
So this would be one fee for all retroactive quarters?
It would say retroactive fee with a number, and that would be based on the prior quarters. And then,
So two quarters last year.
$80.
Yeah, and then are we catching first quarter, or have we passed
so right now, we're in the third quarter.
third
So-
quarter?
And I
Okay.
don't know based off
Right.
of
Thinking
if
calendar.
this passes, I don't think that this will make the next billing.
We're working on it right now.
We're working on it.
We're working on it right now. I don't know if it'll make it.
Yeah, I don't think it'll make this billing, which will make one more billing for the fiscal year.
So fourth quarter, 40 with the side bill of 120? No,
Yeah,
40, yeah, 120.
So we'll do our best, and the mayor just asked me to share with you. I know that the next billing is ready to go out, but should you move forward, we'll do our best to spread this out so that it doesn't hit the ratepayers all in one. And I'll work with Marty Brophy and with Megan to try to ensure that that happens.
And I'm hoping that we can maybe have some flushing out of that process when this matter comes back to city council, because I would hate to have the residents be hit with the full bill amount in their next quarterly paying. Okay, secondly, just a few things. Contract length, you spoke about our previous. Is there a length to this contract?
so this most recent renewal that happened July 1st of 2025 is good for 2 years. So a year from this July, it's due to expire again. And that will be the last extension that's put in the contract that we could renew on. I don't, in conversations that I've had, and there is some language in the most recent renewal that talks about not going through that whole process again, where they're going to be looking for more money, and that they would agree to the 2% increase in the prevailing wage based on the number that we settled on last contract. So I think we'll probably be safe for 3 years with this service. After the 3 years, all bets are off. We'll be looking to put on an RFP.
Okay, and so we might be back through this process again, potentially.
I would think in 2.5 years, we'd probably be putting an RFP out sometime in September of 28 for the 29 expiration. When you're asking people to bid on something of this size, I mean, it's a pretty good sized city. It has 26,000 barrels and all the other containers that come within the contract. But they need to have trucks to pick up those barrels. They need to have, a place for the dumping. They need to have capacity at the MRFs where they dump. So, I mean, it's pretty entailed for them to put a bid together. But I do suspect that based on the level of service that we do provide, that you'll see a substantial increase in 3 years.
Okay. We spoke about retained earnings. Can you tell me what do you, in the refuse, what do we use retained earnings for?
Retained earnings are pretty much only used to balance the budget. They certainly have, that's all they've been used for in the past few years. Prior to that, it's used to make capital purchases, whether we need to, trucks or equipment for, mowers or weed whackers or a bobcat or a trash truck, But those are the only capitals that really come within the refuse enterprise.
I think, though, Council, you ask a very salient question, because the purpose of retained earnings in an enterprise is to be a reserve account for capital purposes,
Right.
for unforeseen circumstances. Something breaks and you have to fix it. And a healthy enterprise fund, that's how it operates. This enterprise has not been operating that way because the fees hadn't been raised since George W. Bush was president. We were required, just to keep it solvent, to use those retained earnings to balance the budget every year. So one of the goals of having a fee structure in all of the enterprises that supports the operation is to have healthy retained earnings so that we can look to the fund to actually support capital investment. And that too, that relieves a burden on the general fund taxpayers, because when you can use retained earnings or a healthy enterprise to support capital investments, even through borrowing, then you're not having to do that with other available funds.
Right. I would ask the slideshow that you that you presented. I know you said you were going to email it to us. I think it might be helpful if we post it on the city website as well, so that people can get that information and look at it themselves. I want to talk about now the let's call it options potentially. Now, I know I wasn't part of the original discussion when we originally got into the original contract, where the decision was smaller barrels and then with the green bags, so that the average citizen or average resident isn't subsidizing the trash use of those who use a lot of trash, right? That smaller 32-gallon was based upon what, let's say, your average household may use. Those who may use, those who use more trash would use green bags, so that the average household that's only using the barrel doesn't have to subsidize those who are producing more trash. And so now we're talking about basically kind of getting back to that type of thing where more money, larger barrel, but a lot of people are now used to the smaller barrel, so they may not use as much trash, but they'll be paying more for a bigger barrel that they may not fully use, which is basically subsidizing the trash use of other residents who do use more trash. So the original rationale, we're kind of flipping rationales right now, essentially. So is an option to you said 110, potentially, let's say 115 makes us healthy and whole with our existing service. Why is that not an option?
So what I can tell you is when we built this, we built it with the intent of covering all the accounts. I mean, there could be 1,000 different variables, and I don't know for sure if we were to offer an option, what the level of participation would be if people had two options.
No, I'm saying general, like citywide.
I don't know, because I guess I never really ran the numbers any other way. I would have to really look at because if we move forward with a larger barrel, we have to make the acquisition of the larger barrel. Part of that acquisition is probably going to cost close to $2 million. So, we know the barrels are, give or take, about $60 a piece. We have to have 27 or 28,000 because we need to keep barrels in stock. We need to get them all stamped and labeled, and we need to hire a company to come out here and deliver them, because we certainly don't have the manpower or know-how to do that stuff. So,
well, I guess my question is,
would the 100 if we stayed at the barrel?
Right, maintain the current services we have and just raise the fee to the 115 that you said would make us whole?
I guess I would have to run the numbers. It'll be close. We could look at it.
Because and the reason I say this is because I've known this has been coming for a while. I think we've all known this is coming for a while. And so I've been trying to get in front of as many people as possible. I just held a community meeting earlier this week, or last week, excuse me. And I would put this question in front of them, right? What would you like to see? A smaller increase with existing services, larger increase with the bigger barrel? And I've been in different, in that community forum, most, the barrels had it. Most people raised their hand for larger barrel, larger increase. But I've been in other rooms where I make the same pitch and they say, smaller increase, keep same services. And so, I'm hearing kind of from both sides. I think most people understand that fees go up, especially when you say that this particular fee hasn't been raised for 20 years. And so I think people know this is coming. But we've been dealing with the smaller barrel for this long. If we can minimize the increase and just maintain the same service, I think generally people will be, I think that's the less harmful or the less impactful option than going for a larger barrel, larger increase, when the rationale behind this whole thing to begin with was smaller barrel and let those who use more trash pay for it themselves through green bags. So that's, maybe we could run the numbers and see if that's
Probably put something together to give you, I certainly would like to speak with the mayor about what his thoughts are on that. I suppose we could go with some form of a hybrid approach where if somebody wanted a larger barrel, if we could figure out the factor in a way to give that person a larger barrel with a little bit higher of a rate, if that was their choice, then that would be their choice. But I think Megan and I can work on that and get something together.
Yeah, I think if we could have that option, I think that's a clear option. Keep the same service, smaller increase, or a larger increase, larger barrel. It may be difficult to provide a hybrid option. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of logistics and craziness that come along with that. So I think generally we got to pick one or the other. I would be more comfortable with keeping the service as is, smaller increase, and let those who use a lot of trash pay for it themselves through the green bags.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can talk through it and try to figure out something.
Okay.
And the whole intent, just so you know, the whole intent when we went to the smaller barrel and the larger recycling barrel was to encourage people to recycle. That was, back in 2015, 2016, that's where everything was at. But, in 2015, 2016, recycling was very easy to get rid of.
Right.
It's no longer easy to get rid of, and it's, $20 to $25 more per ton, more expensive to get rid of. So,
right. I mean, China was eating it all.
taking
95% of all our recycling went to China. Now they basically...
They shut it off.
They shut it off.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's an issue. Let me see. Did you say that we collect $20 per mattress, but we're paying $35 for its disposal?
No.
Okay.
Every mattress that we get is $20, and the contract requires Republic to dispose of the mattresses.
So we're a pass-through.
We're a pass-through.
Collect the $20.
We get the $20.
So that's all profit.
That's all profit.
Okay. Okay. Those are essentially my questions. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Well, sir,
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think that's great if we can get that second option. I think that's a great idea, so we look forward to that. Any other questions, councilors? Councilor Nacastro?
Thank you. What is your plan to increase the collection rate of these utilities that are subject to enterprise funds? Have you got a plan? Have you thought about it? Because other councilors have said, you should be collecting more than we are. And I know I spoke at length to Mr. Brophy, the treasurer, about how he does it on a cycle and liens the properties and all. But even still, there are properties that aren't subject to mortgages and escrows that aren't paying in a timely fashion. What ideas have you got, or
Well,
Would you
I mean,
work on it?
I would say even those properties, Counselor, those properties, just because they don't have escrow or they don't, you know, have a mortgage, say, they still get liened, right? So
Sure.
so at some point, the enterprise will recover the expenses if the property changes hands. It's not ideal. We certainly don't shut people off on trash. But 94 or 95% recovery is pretty good when you think about it, right? 5% a year that we struggle to get, you know, and that's 5% when you factor that in. Some of those are 41Cs. Those are people that are below the poverty line that get free trash service. You know, so I don't know that in any market that 94, 95% can be beat. And I don't really know that there's a strategy to get there. But I mean, we could certainly look and try to come up with something.
I spoke to Marty at length after your discussion with him today, Counselor, and the commissioner is right. We can always do better. And so we will look at ways to improve that. But one of the things actually I was talking to the mayor about before the meeting started was taking a look across the board at our collection rates and making sure that we're doing as well as we should. And so we're going to develop some data on that, and I'll gladly share it with you.
That'd be swell. I don't know, it's in my brain, I don't know where it comes from, but I think some communities will waive the penalties to get the money in.
We oftentimes will waive interest and, you know, reduce interest so that they're only paying the fee for the actual utility. Not everyone, but certainly the ones that come to us where there are issues, we always put that into consideration.
Okay, thank you, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Counselor Thompson, one question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So you briefly brought up the exemptions. Can you just maybe go over what exemptions are available for the refuse? I know it's what, the 32C, the senior exemptions?
So 41C, which is a senior exemption.
41C.
If you're below the poverty line and you qualify, I think you can get some form of tax relief. If you live in a single-family home and you have trash service, your trash service is free. So the city pays for that trash service.
So it's the 41C?
41C for that, and then the other one would be anybody that lives or that has anything from above a single-family, two-family, three-family. If there are vacant apartments in those properties, I believe it's up to 40% that they can apply for an abatement to, as long as they can show proof that those apartments are not rented, then they can receive a 40% reduction in their trash fee.
And anyone who can provide evidence of their own trash service is also exempt?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, trash service is just an option. You're required to have a trash service under the law, I believe, under the Board of Health.
That we're
regulations.
required to provide trash service?
We're not required to provide, but you're required to have a trash service at your house. So if you do not have an alternate trash hauler, then the city will provide it to you. And if we go through that process and the people get trash and they don't pay the bill, then we simply lien it. But if somebody can prove that they have a dumpster at their house, every quarter, those people, we deal with the same people all the time. You know, they come in, they show us their receipts that are, you know, identified a dumpster at their property, and we abate those.
Okay. We'll postpone it to get some of that additional information.
Do you want to make the motion?
What I could say, I'll work with Megan this week, and we'll get you something like well before your next meeting.
So we're
that you'll
planning
have-
another ordinance meeting. So far, we have penciled it in for in a couple of weeks, April 14th. It's a Tuesday. So that's pretty quick. So if you want to get that information in possibly for that meeting, does that sound good, or?
The only thing about that is if we want to try to spread that cost out over multiple bills, the sooner that you move this forward, the easier for us that will be to do.
So, well, I mean, that's in 2 weeks, in 14 days, so. At the city council meeting? Okay, do you want to do that, or?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and
So if you
we'll be
want to
able-
get that information to us and then
Yep,
see.
we'll be able to, we'll provide it to you. We'll try to get you to by the end of this week.
Okay.
If not, sometime early next week.
Okay.
Then I'll make a motion to recommend it favorably with the expectation that we'll do those further numbers to see what it would cost if we just kept same services, how much that increase would be.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? Passes back
Thank you.
to the full city
Thank
council.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Council.
you.
Thank you. Make a motion adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
So that was a second. Was there a second?
Second.
Second. Motion's been made to adjourn and properly seconded. We are adjourned.
Perfect.